Arcane Season 2, as we all know it, is amazing. From the beautifully animated characters and landscapes, all the way to the fight sequences. And of course, they somehow made us love the characters even more. They had a lot to live up to from Season 1, given how big of an impact it made. And in my humble opinion, they finished Season 2 with a grand slam. After the last act came out though, I was devastated it all ended and honestly felt pretty empty inside. But I had so much of this Arcane fan energy that I had to let out, which is what got me to do this review on Season 2, and specifically highlight the top few reasons that made Season 2 stand out. Now, here is your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched Arcane Season 2 yet, please leave this channel and watch it on Netflix. Here are the top 5 reasons why I think Season 2 is as good as it is. So on to the first reason, the fight scenes. I absolutely loved episode 9. It was 45 minutes of pure battle, and you got to see nearly all the characters fighting. But what I sincerely appreciate throughout this episode is during all the fights, it was a continuous flow. You saw one punch followed by another, who dodged what, and bullets were continuously flying. It was really just a bunch of solid fight sequences. And one fight that brought out the importance of this is when Mel and Kate went against Ambessa. We saw every single punch Kate was trying to give and every single shield Mel used to protect Kate with. And that conveyed the desperate situation they were in to try defeat Ambessa. And that just gave us, the viewers, so much more to work with. But I have to admit, for the few fight scenes we did see in Act 1 and 2, I was a bit underwhelmed. I did enjoy the Vi vs Jinx fight at the end of episode 3 because of the meaning behind the fight, the desperate situation that both sisters were in, and the struggle you could see in their eyes of having to fight one another. But in terms of the actual fighting, there wasn't that much action. Instead, there were quite a few slow motion frames. Yes, to convey their despair, but personally, I thought it took away from some of the actual fight sequences, which we saw a lot more in Season 1 and Episode 9 of Season 2. All that being said, in balance, the producers had a lot to pack into Season 2 and they had a budget they had to work with. I personally think a lot of that budget was put into Episode 9 to give an amazing end to the series. The second reason is telling a realistic story, and not sugarcoating it and making it a fairy tale ending. The writers chose to ground the story in reality, and because Arcane Season 2 is ultimately about war and power, and within that context, I'm really glad the writers did that theme justice by reflecting the reality of it, death and sacrifice. Just like how Vander said at the start of Season 1,
nobody wins in war, Vi.
Every survivor at the end of the series has lost something very dear to them. Personally, some of the shows that have stuck with me the most are those with unhappy endings, irrespective of what the genre is. I think it is actually a really smart way for writers and producers to end things, because it stabs the viewers in the hearts and makes them 1. Remember the ending, and 2. Want and crave for so much more. The third reason is the writing, specifically how they use what characters say to foreshadow what will come next. The writers are so good at planting these seeds throughout the show, seeds they planted in Season 1 to only grow in Season 2, which got released 3 years later. What's even crazier is how they get the characters to foreshadow it for themselves, as if the characters are just somehow knowledgeable enough to know about the consequences of their actions, but just somehow can't stop themselves from making the wrong choices. There are so many examples of this throughout the show, but my favorite one is by Victor. Towards the end of Season 1, he said,
"We lost ourselves, lost our dream. In the pursuit of great, we failed to do good."
This really hit him in the second half of Season 2 though, where he wanted to get rid of all human suffering, but couldn't see the bigger picture of what he was creating, an army of Hextech robots. Next is character relationships. This season, we saw the relationships initiated in season 1 grow with so much more depth, be it romantic, family, brotherhood, mother to daughter, or even mentor to pupil. First, we have Vi and Jinx become sisters on the same team again, working together to bring Vander back. But there's so much history between the two that it's convoluted.
I'm always with you, even when we're worlds apart.
Even if we're worlds apart, I'm always with you, sort of dynamic superseded everything at the end. If you accept the theory Jinx is still alive, but flew away and left Piltover, I think both sisters are at peace of not having to be there for one another, but are happy for each other, and I think that is beautiful. Then we have Jace and Victor, of course, from lab partners to brothers, to enemies, and then deciding to finish the evil they both started, to be there for one another because they shared the same dream and ambition. Just the meaning behind their brotherhood and being there for each other transcends even the normal blood and family relationships you see in most places. And last but not least, and I really am just fangirling here, is Kate and Vi. Before season 2 started, I did not know what to expect for these two. And as I was watching season 2, I was scared whether they will be endgame or not. But this ship got way more than what we deserved. I won't delve into the depth of the relationship here, as that's for another video, but I'll just leave you with what Amanda Overton, the lead writer for Arcane, said in an interview. They have to go through the hardest possible things you can throw at them, and they have to start the furthest away they possibly can in order to come together. And that encapsulates the depth of Kate and Vi's relationship. Now, the last reason is character agency. But let me first explain by what I mean by character agency. It is part of character development, but a more nuanced point that contributes to that. In season 1, we definitely saw a lot of character growth. They established who the main characters are, developed their traits, made them go through some tribulations and journeys to show us what each character stood for as well as their values. However, in season 1, the plot was driven by events, as opposed to characters' choices. For example, first, the Hextech Crystal Blast at Jace's flat led to the Enforcers raiding the Undercity. Second, another example is at the end of season 1, Act 1, after the factory exploded and Vander died, the random stroke of luck Silco had to find Powder lying there because he scouted the area instead of, I guess, just running away from an explosion. And then third, there's of course Jinx's madness, which wasn't a choice at all. It drove her to do so many things which led to various events that pushed the story along, such as at the end of season 1, where in a second of madness, she killed Silco, despite regretting it right after. The writers portrayed it in such a way that it wasn't her choice, and she wasn't in a sound mind when she did that. Now in season 2, given we have the character foundations established, the writers were able to do so much more with the characters and in essence give them agency, letting each character's purposeful choice drive the plot. Let's continue with Jinx. From the start of episode 2, we now see her mind is quiet and her madness is toned down. Everything that comes after is her own rational choice. When Isha gets jailed in Stillwater, she purposely goes to save her. When she realizes Warwick is actually Vander, she goes to find Vi for help. Letting Jinx take control of essentially her own plotline just enabled for her character development so much more. Which in turn, I think, made us love her even more, because we were then able to see so many other sides of her, as well as to fully appreciate her sacrifice at the end to save Vi. On the flip side, another great example of character agency is Kate. She grew from this one-dimensional good girl character in Season 1 to someone who really made some grim choices in Act 1 of Season 2, to using her gun to punch Vi and essentially break up with her, and also accepting to lead Piltover under martial law. I could never hate Caitlyn, but seeing her downfall in Episode 3, all driven by her own choices, was intense, because she was the one accountable for it and not. To conclude, needless to say, the character development in Season 2 was stellar, and we got to see the relationships between different characters grow tremendously. In the end, what makes the entire Arcane series hold such a special place in my heart is because of these characters, the journey they had to go through, the sacrifices they had to make along the way, but also the other people they've met and how they've grown. And although there are so many parts of Arcane I love, like the fight scenes, the writing, the animation, as well as the music, though I didn't even mention it here, it really just boils down to having a great story with amazing characters.
And though we are doomed to revisit the error of our ways, spark ever more conflicts, our story isn't over.